The stars looked different through the window of the human ship New Horizons. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold glass and watched the swirling purple and gold clouds of the planet below. 3 days ago, they had been mapping empty space near the edge of human territory. Now they were looking at something that shouldn't exist. Still can't believe it, Jake said to himself. The planet was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Massive crystal formations jutted up from the surface like frozen lightning. The whole world seemed to glow with its own light. Behind him, Dr. Lisa Park was bent over her computer screen. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as numbers and charts filled the display. She had been working for 6 hours straight, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa called out. Her voice was tight with excitement and worry. Jake walked over to her station. The screen showed wave patterns that looked like heartbeats, but wrong somehow. They pulsed with a rhythm that felt sad, even through the cold data on the monitor. "What am I looking at?" Jake asked. "These are the signals we picked up yesterday. I've been running them through every translation program we have." Lisa rubbed her tired eyes. "They're not random. There's a pattern here, almost like language, but it's not coming from any technology I can identify." Captain Ben Rogers walked into the room just as Lisa finished speaking. He was a big man with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much of the galaxy. "What's the status on those signals?" Lisa turned to face him. "Captain, I think they're distress calls. The emotional content is unlike anything in our databases. Whatever is sending these signals is in serious trouble." Ben nodded slowly. He had learned to trust Lisa's instincts over the years. If she said something was wrong, it usually was. "Any idea what kind of life form we're dealing with?" "That's the strange part," Lisa said. "The signals are too strong to be coming from anything small. We're talking about a creature with incredible mental power, possibly telepathic abilities, far beyond what we've seen before." Jake looked back at the planet. Something moved in the clouds, just for a second. It was too far away to see clearly, but it looked massive. "Captain, permission to take the ship closer to the surface." Ben considered this. First contact with alien species was always dangerous. They had protocols to follow, safety measures that had kept human crews alive for decades. But those signals on Lisa's screen sounded like someone crying for help. "Amy, open a channel to Earth Command," Ben said to their communications officer. Amy Collins was young but sharp, and she could work miracles with their communication systems. "Channel open, Captain," Amy said. "Earth Command, this is Captain Rogers of the New Horizons. We have encountered what appears to be an intelligent alien species in distress. Request permission to investigate and render assistance if possible." The response came back after several minutes. Space was big, and even radio signals took time to travel. "New Horizons, you are authorized to investigate. Maintain standard first contact protocols. Do not engage unless directly threatened." Ben closed the channel and looked at his crew. "You heard them. Lisa, keep working on those signals. Amy, monitor all frequencies for changes. Jake, take us down slowly. I want to know what we're dealing with before we get too close." The ship descended through the planet's atmosphere. The crystal formations on the surface became clearer as they got closer. They were huge, some of them reaching up into the clouds like mountains made of glass. The whole landscape sparkled and shimmered with colors that had no names. "Captain," Amy called out suddenly. "The signals just got stronger, much stronger. And they're coming from the northern continent, near those big crystal canyons." Jake adjusted their course. As they flew over the crystal formations, he saw something that made him catch his breath. There were structures down there, carved into the crystal itself. They looked ancient, like they had been there for thousands of years. Are those buildings? Jake asked. Lisa looked at the scanner readings. I think so. But the construction methods are nothing like human architecture. These were made by something that could shape crystal with its bare hands. The ship continued north. The distress signals got stronger with every mile. Amy had to turn down the volume on her headphones because the emotional weight of the transmissions was starting to give her a headache. There, Jake said, pointing ahead. Look at that canyon. A massive gorge opened up in front of them, its walls lined with crystals that reflected the light in all directions. The canyon was so deep that its bottom was lost in shadows. But floating above the center of the canyon was something that made everyone on the bridge stop and stare. It was a dragon. The creature was enormous, easily 300 feet from nose to tail. Its scales were gold and seemed to glow with their own inner light. Massive wings kept it hovering in place as it looked down into the canyon depths. The dragon's head was noble and intelligent, with eyes that held ancient wisdom. My God, Lisa whispered. It's beautiful. The dragon was making sounds, deep harmonic notes that resonated through the crystal walls of the canyon. Each note seemed to carry incredible sadness and desperation. The creature was clearly trying to reach something in the canyon below, but every time it moved closer to the walls, the crystals around it began to crack and break. The signals are coming from her, Amy said. She's the one calling for help. Jake brought the ship to a hover about a mile away from the dragon. They all watched as the magnificent creature tried again and again to descend into the canyon. Each attempt failed as the crystal walls became unstable around her massive form. She's too big, Jake realized. Whatever she's trying to reach down there, her size is working against her. The dragon suddenly noticed their ship. Her great head turned toward them, and Jake felt something touch his mind. It was gentle but incredibly powerful, like standing next to an ocean. Images flashed through his thoughts, pictures of smaller dragons, young ones, trapped somewhere in the darkness below. She has children down there, Lisa said, tears running down her face. Her babies are trapped, and she can't reach them. The dragon's mental touch withdrew, but the sadness remained. She looked at the human ship for a long moment, then returned her attention to the canyon. Her calls became more desperate, more urgent. Ben made a decision that would change everything. Amy, try to establish communication. Use every translation protocol we have. Lisa, I want to know everything about those canyon walls and what might be trapping those young ones. Jake, bring us closer, but slowly. I don't want to startle her. As the new horizons moved closer to the ancient dragon, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to become part of something much bigger than a simple first contact mission. The dragon's pain was real, and her children were in danger. For the first time in his career, he found himself hoping that human technology and human determination would be enough to help a creature that had probably been flying these skies since before his species learned to make fire. The dragon watched them approach, hope flickering in her ancient eyes like a candle in the wind. Amy Collins had never tried to talk to a dragon before. She sat at her communication station, fingers hovering over the controls, trying to figure out how to speak to a creature that was older than human civilization. The translation programs were running at full power, but they were designed for radio signals and computer languages, not the deep harmonic sounds coming from the golden dragon. Try the universal mathematics approach, Dr. Lisa Park suggested. Start with simple number sequences, then move to basic concepts. Amy nodded and began transmitting a series of mathematical patterns. 1 + 1 = 2. 2 + 2 = 4. The Fibonacci sequence. Prime numbers. She sent them out on multiple frequencies, hoping the dragon would understand that they were trying to communicate. The dragon stopped her mournful calling and turned to look at their ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the crystal walls around the canyon began to resonate with a soft, musical tone. The dragon was responding, but not in mathematics. She was speaking in pure emotion, and images. Jake Morrison felt it first. Pictures flooded his mind, clearer than any movie he had ever seen. He saw the dragon's home, a vast crystal city built into the canyon walls. He saw other dragons, some gold like her, others silver and bronze and deep blue. They were ancient beings, proud and wise, who had ruled the skies of this world for millions of years. The dragon's name came to him like a whisper, Zarathis. She was the mother queen of her clan, the keeper of ancient knowledge and the protector of the young. "I'm getting images," Jake said, his voice filled with wonder. "She's showing me her people. They call themselves the Ethrani." More pictures came. Zarathis showed them the cosmic storm that had swept through their solar system 3 weeks ago. It was beautiful and terrible. A wall of energy and twisted space that had passed over their planet like a hurricane made of stars. The Ethrani had weathered such storms before, but this one was different. The storm damaged something, Lisa said, also receiving the mental images. It created tears in space itself, right here in the canyon. Captain Ben Rogers watched his crew as they experienced the dragon's telepathic communication. Their faces showed amazement and growing understanding. What about her children? The images shifted, becoming darker and more desperate. Zarathis showed them 3 young dragons, much smaller than herself, but still the size of human aircraft. They had been exploring the deep crystal caves when the cosmic storm hit. The space-time tiers had opened around them, trapping them in dimensional pockets that existed between reality and somewhere else. "Dimensional rifts," Engineer Pete Johnson said, studying the scanner readings. The storm created unstable pockets of space-time throughout the cave system. The young ones are trapped in bubbles of altered reality. Amy finally managed to establish a basic communication link using the dragon's own harmonic frequencies. Zarathis's voice came through the ship's speakers, deep and musical, but heavy with grief. "My young ones call to me from the between spaces." The dragon's translated words filled the bridge. "For many days I have tried to reach them, but my presence makes the tears wider. My power feeds the chaos. Each time I draw near, the rifts become more dangerous." Ben stepped forward. "We want to help. Can you show us exactly where they are?" More images flowed from Zarathis. The 3 young dragons were trapped in separate dimensional pockets, deep within the crystal cave system. The rifts were slowly closing, but randomly and unpredictably. If the dimensional bubbles collapsed while the young ones were still inside, they would either be crushed by collapsing space-time or lost forever in another dimension. Dr. Kate Williams, the ship's physicist, had been quietly studying the quantum readings from the canyon. She looked up from her instruments with excitement and fear in her eyes. "I think I understand the problem. The Ethrani are energy-based life forms. Their very presence destabilizes quantum fields. It's like trying to perform delicate surgery while wearing giant magnets." "But we're different," Jake realized. "Our energy signatures are much smaller." "Exactly," Kate said. "We might be able to navigate the dimensional rifts where they cannot. Our smaller size and different biological energy patterns could allow us to move through the unstable areas without making them worse." Lisa was already working on the biological scans of the trapped young dragons. "They're scared and getting weaker. Their distress calls are actually making the rifts more unstable. We need to calm them down before we can attempt any kind of rescue." Pete Johnson brought up the technical challenges on his screen. "Even if we can navigate the rifts, we'll need a way to extract 3 creatures that weigh several tons each. And we'll have to do it through dimensional tiers that are constantly shifting." Zarathis had been listening to their discussion through a telepathic link. When she spoke again, Her voice carried a note of desperate hope. You are small beings, quick thinkers. Your minds work in ways mine cannot. The Etherani have observed many species across the great dark, but none have shown such courage for strangers. Will you truly risk your lives for young ones that are not your own? Ben looked around at his crew. Jake was already checking the ship's supply of EVA suits. Amy was working on communication protocols that could work inside dimensional rifts. Lisa was studying everything they knew about dragon biology. Pete and Kate were huddled over technical specifications, trying to figure out how to build quantum stabilizers from spare parts. We'll need volunteers, Ben said. This is way beyond anything we've trained for. No one should feel pressured to. I'm in, Jake interrupted. Me too, Pete said. Count me in, added Tony Garcia, their pilot. Lisa looked up from her computer. I need to go too. If we're going to communicate with scared alien children, we'll need someone who understands their biology and psychology. Kate shook her head. Too dangerous for all of us to go. I'll stay here and monitor the quantum fields. I can guide you through the worst areas from up here. Amy nodded in agreement. I'll maintain communication links and coordinate with Zarathis. Ben felt proud of his crew, but also terrified for them. All right. We'll need to modify the EVA suits with quantum stabilizers. Kate, how long do you think we have? Kate studied the dimensional readings. The rifts are closing at an accelerating rate. Based on current measurements, I'd say we have maybe 6 hours before the dimensional pockets become too unstable to navigate safely. Zarathis sent another wave of images, showing them the internal layout of the crystal caves. The passages were vast, carved by millions of years of dragon habitation. Beautiful crystal formations lined the walls, but now many were cracked and broken by the dimensional distortions. The young ones are here, here, and here. The dragon showed them 3 locations deep within the cave system. They are frightened and growing weak. Their names are Shimmer, Bronzewing, and Little Flame. Jake studied the mental map. We'll have to split up to reach all 3 locations in time. That's incredibly dangerous, Ben said. If something goes wrong, Captain, Zarathis interrupted gently. Your species thinks in ways that surprise even the ancient Etherani. You see solutions where we see only problems. Trust in your small being wisdom. Over the next 2 hours, the human crew worked frantically to prepare for the rescue mission. Kate and Pete rigged quantum stabilizers using the ship's sensor arrays and spare computer processors. The devices were crude, but should provide some protection against dimensional distortions. Amy established a stronger telepathic link with Zarathis, allowing the dragon to share detailed knowledge of the cave system and her children's exact locations. Lisa prepared medical supplies that might work on alien biology, though she had to guess about dragon physiology. As the rescue team prepared for departure, Zarathis watched their small ship with amazement. In all her thousands of years of life, she had never seen beings work so hard to save children that were not their own. Perhaps there was more to these small, quick-lived creatures than the Etherani had ever imagined. The countdown to the rescue mission had begun. Jake Morrison stood in the equipment bay, testing the modified EV suit for the 3rd time. The quantum stabilizer that Pete Johnson had built looked like a metal backpack covered in blinking lights and cables. It was heavy and awkward, but Kate Williams promised it would keep him from being torn apart by dimensional forces. How does it feel? Pete asked, checking the connections one more time. Like I'm wearing a small computer on my back, Jake replied. But if it keeps me in one piece while I'm walking through broken space-time, I'm not complaining. Tony Garcia was suiting up next to him. The pilot was smaller than Jake, but known for his steady nerves and quick reflexes. If anyone could navigate the twisted passages of the crystal caves, it would be Tony. Still can't believe we're doing this, Tony said, pulling on his helmet. 3 days ago, I was worried about asteroid navigation. Now I'm getting ready to rescue baby dragons from another dimension. Pete finished his own preparations. As the ship's engineer, he had insisted on joining the rescue team. The quantum stabilizers were his design, and he wanted to be there if they needed emergency repairs. Plus, his practical problem-solving skills might be crucial in the caves. Dr. Lisa Park was making final adjustments to her medical kit. She had no idea what dragon children might need if they were injured, but she had packed everything from pain relievers to emergency oxygen supplies. Her real job would be communication, using the telepathic link that Zarathis had established to help calm the frightened young ones. Captain Ben Rogers watched his team prepare with a mixture of pride and worry. Remember, you have 6 hours. Maximum before those dimensional rifts become too unstable. If you're not out by then, I'll have to leave you behind to save the ship. Understood, Captain, Jake said. We'll get those kids out. Amy Collins was coordinating from the communication station. I've got a stable link with Zarathis. She'll be your guide through the cave system. Dr. Williams has the quantum field readings, and I'll monitor your life signs. Kate Williams looked up from her instruments. The dimensional distortions are getting worse. You need to move fast. I'm reading 3 separate rift zones, each about 2 miles apart in the cave system. Zarathis had positioned herself at the canyon entrance, her massive form creating a living landmark. Through the telepathic link, she sent waves of gratitude and desperate hope to the human rescue team. The entrance to the deep caves is there. The dragon's voice echoed through their minds, showing them a crack in the crystal wall that looked barely wide enough for a person. My people carved these passages when the world was young. They will seem strange to small being eyes. Jake activated his suit's lights and checked his equipment one final time. The quantum stabilizer hummed with power, creating a small field of stable space-time around his body. It felt like wearing a protective bubble that pressed against his skin. Team, sound off, Jake said into his communicator. Garcia ready, Tony replied. Johnson ready, Pete confirmed. Park ready, Lisa added. All right, people. Let's go save some dragons. The rescue team left the New Horizons in a small shuttle that Tony piloted to the canyon floor. The crystal formations were even more impressive up close, towering overhead like frozen waterfalls made of light. Everything sparkled and reflected, the light in ways that hurt to look at directly. The cave entrance was exactly where Zarathis had shown them. It was a narrow opening that descended into darkness, carved with smooth precision that spoke of incredible age. Strange symbols were etched into the walls, glowing faintly with their own inner light. Dragon writing, Lisa observed. These caves are like a library of their civilization. As they descended, the passages opened up into vast chambers supported by natural crystal pillars. The architecture was unlike anything human minds had conceived. Everything curved and flowed like frozen music, beautiful and alien. First-dimensional distortion coming up. Kate's voice crackled through their communicators. You should see reality starting to bend in about 50 meters. She was right. The air in front of them began to shimmer like heat waves. The crystal walls twisted and curved in directions that shouldn't exist. Jake's quantum stabilizer began beeping faster as it worked to maintain normal space around his body. Stay close together, Jake ordered. If anyone's stabilizer fails, we all go back immediately. They entered the distortion field. It felt like walking through thick liquid that pressed against them from all sides. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting in rhythm with some cosmic heartbeat. Colors that had no names flickered at the edges of their vision. This is incredible, Pete said, watching his instruments record impossible readings. The dimensional barriers are paper-thin here. We're walking through the spaces between realities. Lisa suddenly stopped walking. I can hear them. The young dragons. They're calling for their mother. Through the telepathic link, faint voices reached them. They were young voices, scared and confused, crying out in harmonics that made the crystal walls ring like bells. The sounds were beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. Which way to the first one? Jake asked. Zarathus guided them through the mental connection, showing them passages that led deeper into the cave system. The dimensional distortions grew stronger as they went, forcing them to move slowly and carefully. One wrong step could send them tumbling into a dimensional tier. There, Lisa pointed ahead. Shimmer is through that wall of twisted space. What blocked their path looked like a waterfall, made of broken glass and starlight. It was a dimensional rift that cut across the entire cave passage, creating a barrier of chaotic space-time. Through the shimmering distortion, they could see a young dragon huddled in a crystal chamber. Shimmer was about the size of a small airplane, with silver scales that reflected light like mirrors. The young dragon was pressing herself against the far wall of the chamber, crying for her mother in musical tones that echoed strangely through the dimensional barrier. How do we get through that? Tony asked, staring at the rift. Kate's voice came through the communicator with a solution. The harmonics. Listen to the dragon's calls. They're creating resonance patterns in the quantum field. If you can match those frequencies with your stabilizers, you might be able to sync with the dimensional barrier. Pete immediately started adjusting his equipment. It's like tuning a radio to the right frequency. We need to match our quantum signatures to the dragon's natural harmonics. Lisa stepped forward, opening her mind to the telepathic connection. Shimmer, we're here to help. Can you understand me? The young dragon's cries changed, becoming more focused and hopeful. Images flowed through Lisa's mind, showing the storm that had trapped her, the fear of being separated from her mother, and the growing weakness from days of isolation. She's been trapped for 5 days, Lisa reported. She's scared but not hurt. If we can get through the barrier, she'll come with. You, Seek, made the decision. Pete, sync our stabilizers to her harmonic frequency. Tony, be ready to grab her if she panics. Lisa, keep her calm. Pete worked frantically with his equipment, while the dimensional rift pulsed and shifted around them. The barrier was beautiful and terrifying, like looking into the heart of a star. That had been broken into pieces. Got it, Pete said finally. Stabilizers are sensed. We should be able to pass through the barrier now. Jake took the first step into the dimensional rift. It felt like walking through liquid lightning. Every cell in his body tingled with energy as the quantum stabilizer fought to keep him intact. The barrier resisted, then suddenly gave way. Was through. Shimmer looked up at him with eyes like liquid silver, intelligent and afraid. She was beautiful in a way that made Jake's heart ache. Despite her size, she was clearly just a child, lost and scared and wanting her mother. It's okay, Jake said softly, even though he knew she couldn't understand his words. We're going to take you home. The young dragon approached him cautiously, her mental voice touching his mind with wonder and hope. She had never seen creatures like these small beings who had come to help her. Through the telepathic link, Lisa sent waves of comfort and reassurance. Your mother sent us. We're going to take you back to her. Shimmer's joy was like sunrise after a long night. She pressed her great head against Jake's chest gently, careful not to hurt the fragile human who had risked everything to save her, but their work was just beginning. 2 more young dragons were still trapped in the dimensional maze, and time was running out. Getting Shimmer out of the dimensional rift was harder than getting in. The young dragon was eager to follow Jake, but her excitement made the quantum fields around them unstable. Every time she moved too quickly, reality rippled like water around them. Easy, girl, Jake said, placing his hand on her silver snout. We need to move slowly. Lisa maintained the telepathic connection, sending calming thoughts to Shimmer while explaining what they needed to do. The young dragon understood and tried to control her movements, but fear and hope made her shake with nervous energy. Tony Garcia led them back through the dimensional barrier, his pilot training helping him navigate the shifting space-time. Pete Johnson brought up the rear, constantly adjusting his quantum stabilizer to compensate for the dragon's presence. "Stabilizers are holding, but barely," Pete reported. "Having Shimmer with us is putting extra strain on the system." They reached the main cave passage just as Kate Williams' voice crackled through their communicators with urgent news. "The dimensional rifts are accelerating their collapse. You've got maybe 4 hours left, and that's being optimistic." Jake looked at his team. They were all tired from navigating the first rift, and they still had 2 more dragons to rescue. "We need to split up. We can't get all 3 out in time if we stay together." It was the most dangerous decision he could make. Splitting up meant that if something went wrong, they couldn't help each other. But Bronze Wing and Little Flame were running out of time. "I'll take Bronze Wing," Tony volunteered. "The readings show his chamber is through the twisted passage to the east." "That leaves Little Flame for me," Pete said. "Her dimensional pocket is the deepest, near the old crystal forge." Lisa shook her head. "You can't go alone. The young dragons need someone who can communicate with them telepathically." "Then come with me," Pete said. "Jake can handle Tony's route." It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was their only chance. Jake would guide Shimmer back to the surface, while Tony rescued Bronze Wing, and Pete and Lisa went after Little Flame. 3 separate missions in a place where reality itself was breaking apart. Zara Face felt their decision through the mental link. Her ancient voice filled their minds with both gratitude and terror. "You risk much for my young ones. The deep caves grow more dangerous with each passing moment." "We know," Jake replied, "but we're not leaving without all of them." The team split up at the central chamber. Jake led Shimmer toward the cave entrance, following the path they had taken to get in. The young dragon stayed close behind him, her silver scales reflecting his helmet lights in dancing patterns on the crystal walls. Tony headed east through passages that curved and twisted like a snake's path. The dimensional distortions here were different, creating pockets of altered time rather than space. He found himself moving through areas where seconds stretched into minutes, then compressed back into normal time. Pete and Lisa descended toward the deepest part of the cave system. The crystal forge that Zarathus had shown them was an ancient place where the dragons had once shaped crystal with their breath and will. Now it was a maze of dimensional tiers that made their instruments go crazy with impossible readings. Jake was making good progress with Shimmer when disaster struck. A section of the cave passage suddenly collapsed, not from physical damage, but from dimensional instability. Reality folded in on itself, creating a wall of twisted space-time that blocked their path to the surface. "Kate, I'm trapped," Jake reported. "The main passage just collapsed into a dimensional fold. Can you guide me around it?" Kate's voice was tense. "I'm not reading any alternate routes. The dimensional distortions are spreading faster than predicted. The whole cave system is becoming unstable." Shimmer sensed Jake's distress and pressed against his back, offering what comfort she could. Through the telepathic link, she shared images of other passages, secret ways that young dragons used to move through the caves unseen by adults. "She knows another way," Jake realized. "Shimmer is showing me a path through the nursery caves." Meanwhile, Tony had found Bronze Wing trapped in a dimensional bubble that was slowly shrinking. The young dragon was bronze-colored as his name suggested, with wings that sparkled like metal in sunlight. He was larger than Shimmer and more frightened, having been alone longer in the twisted space. "Easy, big guy," Tony said, approaching. "Carefully, I'm here to help." Bronze Wing backed away, confused by this strange small creature. He had never seen a human before, and his fear made the dimensional bubble pulse and contract. Tony tried a different approach. Instead of moving closer, he sat down on the crystal floor and began to hum softly. It was a lullaby his mother had sung to him as a child, simple and peaceful. The melody seemed to calm Bronze Wing, and the dimensional bubble stabilized. Lisa's voice came through Tony's communicator, strained with effort. "We found Little Flame, but she's hurt. The dimensional rift damaged her wing, and she's too scared to move." Pete's voice joined the conversation. "The quantum readings down here are off the charts. This whole section is about to collapse into normal space-time. If we don't get out in the next hour, we'll be crushed." Little Flame was the youngest of the 3 dragons, barely larger than a car. Her scales were deep red with gold edges, and one of her wings hung at an odd angle where the dimensional forces had twisted it. She was crying for her mother in soft, musical notes that made the crystal walls weep tears of light. Lisa knelt beside the injured dragon, her medical training taking over despite the alien nature of her patient. "The wing isn't broken, just dislocated. I think I can help her, but she needs to trust me." Pete was working frantically to stabilize the dimensional pocket around them. His quantum stabilizer was overheating from the strain, and sparks were flying from several connections. "Whatever you're going to do it fast. My equipment won't last much longer." Lisa opened her mind fully to the telepathic connection, sharing her own memories of being hurt and helped as a child. She showed Little Flame images of healing, of gentle hands that helped instead of hurt. Slowly, the young dragon allowed Lisa to examine her injured wing. "I need to reset the joint," Lisa sighed. "It's going to hurt for a moment, but then she'll feel better." She had done this procedure on human patients, but never on a dragon. The anatomy was different, but the basic principles were the same. Lisa found the displaced joint and, with careful pressure, guided it back into position. Little Flame cried out in pain, but then relief flooded through the telepathic link. Her wing folded properly against her side, and she nuzzled Lisa's helmet in gratitude. Back in the eastern passages, Tony had successfully calmed Bronze Wing and was leading him toward the central chamber. The young dragon followed trustingly, his fear replaced by curiosity about these strange, helpful creatures. Jake and Shimmer had navigated the secret passages and were climbing toward daylight. The young dragon's knowledge of hidden routes had saved them from the dimensional collapse, and they could see the cave entrance ahead, but time was running out for everyone. Kate's warnings were becoming more urgent as the dimensional rifts throughout the cave system began their final collapse. The cosmic storm's effects were finally stabilizing, which meant the temporary dimensional pockets were snapping back to normal space-time. "All teams, you have 30 minutes maximum," Kate announced. "After that, the cave system will become completely unstable. The dimensional pockets will either collapse or expand unpredictably." Pete's equipment finally gave out with a shower of sparks and smoke. "Stabilizer is dead. Lisa, we need to move now." They ran through the crystal passages with Little Flame, limping beside them, her injured wing making flight impossible. The walls around them were beginning to crack as reality reasserted itself throughout the cave system. Tony emerged into the central chamber with Bronze Wing just as the dimensional distortions reached critical levels. The beautiful crystal formations were shattering as normal physics returned to spaces that had been twisted for weeks. Jake and Shimmer reached the cave entrance and burst into daylight. Zarathis saw her first child emerge and cried out in joy, her harmonic call echoing across the canyon. But Pete, Lisa, and Little Flame were still deep in the collapsing cave system, racing against time and physics itself to reach safety before the dimensional maze became their tomb. Pete Johnson could feel the cave shaking around them as reality snapped back into place. Crystal formations that had stood for millions of years were cracking and falling as the dimensional distortions finally collapsed. He grabbed Lisa's hand and pulled her forward as a massive crystal pillar crashed behind them. "Move, move, move," Pete shouted over the noise of breaking stone. Little Flame limped beside them, her injured wing dragging against the crystal floor. The young dragon was trying her best to keep up, but the pain in her wing made her slow. Lisa kept one hand on the dragon's neck, sending calming thoughts through the telepathic connection while they ran for their lives. The passage ahead of them was filling with crystal dust and debris. Pete's helmet lights cut through the cloud, showing glimpses of the path that led back to the central chamber. But the way was blocked by fallen stones and twisted metal where the cave supports had collapsed. "Dead end," Pete said, breathing hard. "We need another route." Lisa closed her eyes and reached out through the mental link to Zarathis. "Can you show us another way out? The main passages are blocked." The ancient dragon's mind touched theirs, filled with desperate worry for her youngest child. Images flowed through the connection, showing forgotten passages that led to different exits from the cave system. But all of them were far away, and time was running out. Little Flame suddenly lifted her head and made a soft musical sound. She was trying to tell them something, but her young mind couldn't form clear thoughts like her mother could. Instead, she started walking toward a wall that looked solid. "Where is she going?" Pete asked Dot as they got closer. They could see that what looked like solid crystal was actually a hidden entrance, carved so perfectly that it blended with the natural rock. Little Flame pushed against it with her good wing, and the entrance opened into a narrow tunnel that angled upward toward the surface. "Smart girl," Lisa said, patting the young dragon's neck. "You know your home better than we do." The tunnel was barely wide enough for Little Flame to fit through, and the humans had to duck to avoid hitting their heads on the low ceiling. But it was stable, carved from solid rock instead of the fragile crystal formations that were collapsing. Throughout the rest of the cave system, behind them, they could hear the roar of falling stone as the main passages gave way. The dimensional collapse was accelerating, and soon the entire cave network would be sealed forever. Above ground, Zarathis was reunited with Shimmer and waiting anxiously for the others to emerge. Jake Morrison stood beside the young dragon, his hand resting on her silver scales. Through the telepathic link, he could feel the mother dragon's joy at having one child safe, mixed with terror for the two who were still trapped below. Tony Garcia appeared at the cave entrance with Bronze Wing just as another section of the cave system collapsed with a sound like thunder. The bronze-scaled dragon was tired but unharmed, and he ran to his mother with wings spread wide in dragon joy. Zarathis touched both her rescued children with her great head, checking them for injuries and flooding them with love and relief. But her attention kept turning back to the cave entrance, listening for any sign of Little Flame. "Pete and Lisa are still down there with her," Jake reported. "Kate, what's the status on the dimensional collapse?" Kate Williams' voice came through the communicator, tight with worry. "It's accelerating beyond all predictions. The quantum fields are snapping back so fast that they're creating shockwaves through the crystal matrix. The whole mountain is becoming unstable." Captain Ben Rogers' voice joined the conversation from the New Horizons. "Jake, we may need to evacuate. The geological readings show massive structural failure throughout the region." "We're not leaving without our people," Jake said firmly. Zarathis lifted her great head and let out a call that echoed across the canyon. It was different from her earlier cries of distress. This was a sound of power and determination, a mother's voice calling her child home. Deep in the tunnel, Little Flame heard her mother's call and answered with her own small voice. The sound gave her strength as she moved faster despite her injured wing. Lisa and Pete followed, pushing themselves to keep up with the determined young dragon. The tunnel began to slope more steeply upward, and they could see light ahead. Real sunlight, not the artificial glow of their helmet lamps. They were almost out. Little Flame emerged first, bursting from a hidden exit halfway up the canyon wall. She spread her wings and glided down to where her mother waited, crying out in joy and relief. Zarathis caught her youngest child gently in her great claws, careful not to hurt the injured Wingdot Pete, and Lisa climbed out of the tunnel just as the hidden entrance collapsed behind them. They rappelled down the canyon wall on emergency cables, reaching the ground just as the mountain gave a final shudder and went still. The cave system was sealed forever, but all three young dragons were safe. Zarathis gathered her children close, her golden scales glowing brighter with happiness than they had in weeks. Through the telepathic link, waves of gratitude flowed toward the human rescue team. But the dragon's emotions were too complex for simple words. She was experiencing something that no Ethrani had felt before. These small, short-lived creatures had risked everything to save children that were not their own. They had shown courage that impressed even the ancient dragons, and wisdom that found solutions where age and power had failed. "We must perform the bonding of souls," Zarathis announced, her mental voice formal and reverent. "It is the highest honor my people can bestow." Jake looked confused. What does that mean? Images flowed through the connection, showing ceremonies that had taken place in the distant past. The Ethrani had been watching younger species across the galaxy for thousands of years, studying their development and potential. But never before had they found a species worthy of the soul bond, a permanent telepathic connection that made the bonded individuals part of the dragon clan. "You have shown that humans possess something beyond intelligence or technology," Zarathis explained. "You have hearts that care for all life, not just your own kind. This is wisdom that even the ancient Ethrani must learn." The ceremony was beautiful and strange. Zarathis and her children formed a circle around the human crew, their scales glowing with inner light. The dragons began to sing in harmonics that made the air itself shimmer with colors that had no names. Jake felt the telepathic connection deepen and change, becoming something permanent and precious. He could sense not just Zarathis, but all the Ethrani across their world, a vast network of ancient minds that welcomed humanity as family. Lisa gasped as knowledge flowed into her mind, thousands of years of dragon wisdom about life and healing, and the care of young ones. Pete found himself understanding crystal technology and dimensional physics in ways that human science had never imagined. Amy Collins, monitoring from the ship, felt her communication abilities expand as she became a bridge between human and dragon languages. Tony Garcia gained an intuitive understanding of flight that would make him the best pilot in human space. Even Captain Ben Rogers and Dr. Kate Williams, who had remained on the ship, felt the soul bond touch their minds with gifts of leadership, wisdom, and scientific insight. When the ceremony ended, they were no longer just humans and dragons who had worked together. They were family, bonded across species by courage and compassion. "This is only the beginning," Zarathis said, her mental voice warm with affection. "The Ethrani have much to share with humanity, and perhaps you small beings will teach us new ways to see the universe." A permanent research station was established on Viridia, where human scientists and dragon scholars worked together to explore the mysteries of dimensional physics and crystal technology. The young dragons, Shimmer, Bronzewing, and Little Flame, became the first of their kind to learn alongside humans. The partnership between species grew stronger each year. Humans brought their adaptability and problem-solving skills, while the Ethrani shared their ancient knowledge and wisdom. Together, they made discoveries that neither could have achieved alone. Jake Morrison became the first human ambassador to the Ethrani, spending years learning their history and culture. But his favorite moments were still the quiet times when he would play simple human games with the young dragons, teaching them chess while Zarathis watched with amusement. The dragon who couldn't save her young had found something better than rescue. She had found a new family that spanned the stars, bound together by the universal truth that love and courage know no boundaries between species. In the end, it wasn't superior technology or ancient wisdom that saved the day. It was the simple, human willingness to help those in need, no matter how different they might be. And that, the dragons learned, was the most powerful force in the universe.